we go. All right. Hey, everyone, and welcome to the Webline, a podcast about Spider-Man and his amazing world. Here we discuss all aspects of our favorite wall crawler in a fun, informal, but informative forum. I am your humble host, the Spidey Librarian, and this week I'm here with another Spidey Games episode of the podcast. Spidey Games focuses on individual Spider-Man video game reviews as well as more generalized topics involving Spider-Man's place in video game media. This week, I'm joined by my friend and fellow YouTuber, MatCave Gaming, who runs a growing retro gaming channel, as we discuss the storied and epic history of Spider-Man in video games throughout the years and decades. MatCave, how are things in your world today?
Hello there. I'm doing well. It is definitely a Spidey and gaming type of day.
It really is. And I mean, and we'll get into this with the news segment, but man, hype is building around Spidey Gaming for one very specific reason, and that reason is coming on on October 20th. So,
Yes,
uh,
it is.
but yeah, things in your world are good though.
Doing well. I've been really looking forward to doing this podcast with you, and in preparation, I've been playing some more Spider-Man games
Oh,
and
nice,
diving
nice.
back into some of my all-time favorites.
Oh, good. Well, I can't wait to find out what those are. Um, yeah, no, I'm excited to have you here. I've been wanting to do this episode with you for some time, so I'm glad we were finally able to kind of like get our schedules to line up and just kind of make it happen. So, all right. Let's see. Be sure to subscribe to the Webline on your favorite podcast service and leave us a like, review, and a follow where appropriate. If you were on a service that doesn't carry the Webline, let me know just by shooting me an email at spideylibrarian@gmail.com, and I'll do what I can to get it pushed out to you. Finally, for those of you here on the live stream with us today, please be sure to thwip the like button and chime in with excuse me, and chime in with your perspectives on chat. Also, for those of you with us here in the live stream, please feel free to share with us your favorite Spider-Man games in the chat. For those of you listening at a later date, sound off in the comments with your favorite Spider-Man games and what you like most about them. But before we do a daring dive into our timely topic, it is time to dish on the latest Spiderific developments with our knockout news segment, the Bugle Newsflash. All right. So, really, I've only got one big news item for this week, and it is Marvel's Spider-Man 2 related. And that is because we got two new trailers this last week on the same day and even in the same live stream. For those of you who check out um, PlayStation's State of Play games, they're kind of like, their version of like Nintendo Directs and stuff like that. It's basically a showcase of video games that are coming for PlayStation 5, and Spider-Man 2 was on there. And they gave a gameplay overview trailer, which I actually did a reaction to a couple of days ago. I haven't yet made the video for that, but it will be forthcoming soon. But essentially, they gave that, and then they did another trailer at the tail end of the State of Play where they showed off the costumes in the game for the
Nice.
digital deluxe edition. Yeah. Matt Cave, you didn't happen to watch these, did you?
Those new ones I haven't seen. I did see
Oh.
the long 10-minute gameplay segment
Yes.
that they
God,
did.
I love
I
that
think
one
that was
so
like
much.
that's almost over a month ago at this point, but oh
Oh yeah.
dude, it looks so good.
Yeah. When you get a look at the suits, I got fooled into thinking one of the suits, just based on the color scheme. I
Mhm.
thought it was the superior octopus, the superior octopus suit. Do you know the suit that Doc Ock
Mm,
wears after he's been
yeah.
superior spider? It it isn't, but it's colored like
Okay.
the superior octopus, and I'm like, oh my god, are we getting that? And not quite, but but there's a couple of suits for Peter that look really good. I think my favorite one right now is it's called the Apocalyptic suit, and you can actually see like Peter's hair kind of sticking out the top of the suit, and it kind of looks like a spider punk suit, but with a couple of apocalyptic twists to it. And then
I
Miles
love
is
that.
yeah, and Miles has got this blue and kind of yellow suit that is actually fairly close to something that I recently designed for like a spider sona activity that we did at the library. And I was like, "Oh, that's a pretty suit," because it uses like two colors that I'm very fond of the combination of those two colors. And so
Nice.
I'm really excited. But apparently they're not only giving you, I think, like 65 different suits in this game, which is at least what, 30, 32, 33 per spider. But apparently each suit is going to come with like three different like variations of it. So you're going to have like I think you get like a symbiote version of each suit, and you're gonna have different color palettes and stuff like that. And I'm just kind of looking at them and I'm just like, I'm gonna have more choices than I can shake a stick at in this
So
game.
are we potentially getting a symbiote version of Miles Morales?
It's possible. I want to
Oh,
think so.
dude.
I want to think so. I I could be wrong, but I mean, come on, why not? It's not like Miles doesn't have any experience with Venom. In the Ultimate Spider-Man comics, Venom. I didn't read all of the story, but like the symbiote was chasing Miles. The symbiote wanted Miles, and the symbiote was causing a ruckus that actually um, got Miles's mother killed during that story.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like the Ultimate Universe was not kind to Miles. Like pretty much at the end there, it was just him and his dad. He lost his uncle in a fight with him, and then he lost his mom. And like she discovered that he was Miles, like as she was dying. He goes up to her in the suit, and she's just like, it's heartbreaking because like
Dude.
she's like, oh my God, Miles, look at what you can do, and then she dies, and it was just like, oh god, that sucks.
Oh, that's like an Anakin and Shmi Skywalker moment right there.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And so in my mind at least, why not give us some symbiote variants on Miles's suits, he doesn't have as much experience with the symbiote as Peter does, but
Hmm.
I don't know, you never know, this game might even the odds up a little, we'll see. So the gameplay overview trailer itself was pretty cool. It showed us that the map on the game. Did you play the 2018 PS4 Spider-Man?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So you remember how big Manhattan was, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's apparently doubled in size because now they're including the Bronx and Queens as
Yep, we're
places you
getting
can
two more
traverse to.
Boroughs for this, so it's
Getting
gonna
two more
be.
boroughs.
Oh, I can't wait.
And I'm hoping, I mean, I've got several hopes tied up in this sentence, but I am hoping that when they do the third game, because I truly want this and think this will be a trilogy of games, but
Mm.
really, I want so many things to happen for that. I want all, what is it, the five major boroughs? I want all five major boroughs. Okay.
Yeah.
I want the Green Goblin. I personally think that
Oh,
that's when we're gonna get him. Like, I personally think Doc Ock was the big bad for one, Venom is the big bad for two, and then for the final one, Green Goblin. Like that's kind of the trinity of Spider-Man nemesis, and I feel like they're gonna make a trilogy, and that's how it's gonna be. So that's the hope.
let me ask you this, because I'm not even sure of the answer, but is Mr. Osborn always Green Goblin? Or is
There,
someone I know there's Hobgoblin, which is a different character,
yes, yes.
but
There have been other Green Goblins. Harry Osborn has been the Green Goblin after his father
mm,
died. There is at least one or two other people who took over the identity, like kind of on an ad hoc basis, and it never really stuck. But like
mm,
when people think the Green Goblin,
you think of Norman.
Norman is
Yeah.
basically it. Yeah.
And we've
Um,
already set him up in the 2018 game and everything, so we know, his deal.
yeah.
So,
Like MJ found the goblin bombs and or the
mhm,
grenades that will probably be pumpkin bombs, stuff like that.
yeah.
So but yeah, and the funny thing about Hobgoblin, because I see that Sith Apple in the chat has mentioned Hobgoblin. But Hobgoblin is when he first came onto the scene in the comics, you didn't know who he was. And apparently there was a big ruckus behind the scenes with the writers trying to figure out who actually Hobgoblin was. There was something similar with Green Goblin at first, but I think that was resolved pretty quickly because Stan Lee was basically in control at that point. But
Yeah.
by this point, we've got a writer's room. We got people who want the story to go specific ways and everything. And so and it's one of the reasons there's been a whole rigmarole around Hobgoblin's identity over the years. Because at first we thought, oh God, who was it? I think it was Ned Leeds, I think was you know, and then no, it's not Ned Leeds. It was Roderick Kingsley controlling Ned Leeds, and then it was Roderick Kingsley's brother or something like that. And so you're trying to figure that out, and in the meantime, in the story, the thing is that you find someone, this person finds the Green Goblin's old gear, and I think I don't know why he's got the orange overcloak and the different mask, but yeah,
Mm.
he comes into the possession of those things. He finds the glider, he finds the bombs, and argue arguably you had Norman Osborn who was basically contending with insanity. That was the reason he was being the Green
Yeah.
Goblin. This guy apparently was not insane. He was just a really cunning criminal, like mastermind type person. And so you had like a different type of fight that Spider-Man was going into during that time. But yeah, it was an entire thing. I would love to see Hobgoblin. I don't know if we're gonna see Hobgoblin at this point. If Insomniac continues beyond a third game, or maybe even at the end of the third game, like I could see Hobgoblin appearing. But at
Maybe
this
like
point,
DLC or something like that.
ooh,
Yeah.
yes,
That would
DLC.
be cool. Like tease them maybe a little bit, but then have a
Mm,
DLC added for it.
I'm
That could be cool.
God, yeah, no. They haven't announced any DLC for this game yet. Um, I kind of hope we get DLC. I like the DLC that comes out. I would like to see more extra adventures. So,
Yep.
but we'll see what happens. But yeah, no, we two trailers this week. The fast travel system. The fast travel system is so cool because what it looks like it does is when you select the borough that you want to fast travel to, it's like it selects it and then like the map kind of comes in like up to the point where you're gonna be and then you just fly in. It's apparently a really fast travel system.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Um
See,
upgrades. Go ahead.
that's similar to. I wonder if it's going to be the same method that they used in the most recent Ratchet and Clank game that came out on the PS5, where they travel through multiverses and it's all in real time. So they literally like you open up a portal and you swing in and your entire world is different in an instant. So we know these current
Yeah.
systems are capable of it.
That's what it looks like it's gonna do. So no, I haven't played Ratchet and Clank. I want to, but I haven't. But that's what it looks like. Oh, and you may appreciate this too. The boss fights.
Mhm.
The bosses will have health bars. We will actually
Finally.
see how badly we're hurting them instead of going, okay, am I done? Am I done? Am I done? So
When was that? When did that go away? How did that go away in games where it's so rare to have a life meter for a boss?
I don't
I know
know.
they want to be cinematic, but
In terms of like 3D Soulsborne games, I've only really played Elden Ring, but those bosses have meters. They have health meters.
yeah.
So I don't know. That's a really good question that I do not have a good answer for. So, and really, that's kind of all the Spidey news for this week. So let's get ready for our feature segment, a Spidey Games discussion of Spider-Man's amazing history in video games.
Absolutely.
Oh man. So while my love for Spider-Man should be readily apparent to anyone who's listened to an episode of this podcast, or if you've been on my channel, or if you've met me for more than 5 seconds, it might be slightly less obvious that I love video games and spend way more time than I probably should gaming and streaming gameplay, which is one of the reasons that MatCave and I connected so quickly on YouTube. Actually, MatCave, do you remember how we first met? I
Correct me if I'm wrong. It was Metroid Prime, wasn't it?
No, it was Super
No,
Metroid.
it was Super Metroid.
I
It
was
was
playing
Super
Super
Metroid. Yes.
Metroid. I was playing Super Metroid. I was live streaming it. Um, and it was at that point where I was getting like maybe, I don't know, two, three viewers, like if I was lucky, essentially. I'm doing slightly better now, but like,
Mhm.
but basically, and how did you find my channel? I'm really curious.
It was, in all honesty, I was just kind of scrolling through. I was literally like laying in bed. Like it was
Hmm.
like the end of the night for me. I'm like kind of relaxing, going through the recommended stuff because I venture out of just the subscriptions I have. I go into the
Right,
homepage a lot, so I can find a lot of stuff it recommends.
right.
And I'm scrolling past, and Super Metroid catches my eye, and I'm like, oh man, I haven't played this in like in a minute. I'm like, let me see what's going on in this, and then immediately you're talking history, you're talking lore, you're talking everything about Samus and how we got to Super Metroid. I'm like, and I'm in. Like, subscribe, hello in chat. I'm like,
See, these are the benefits of being a nerd about things. You talk, you let your nerd flag fly, and so some
yep.
people are like, "That's my banner right there," you know. So, well, no, and the thing is, because I remember, we started chatting, and I was like, oh God, yes, someone who knows these games, and it was like, I'm sure we've all felt that. We find someone who, you mentioned like Star Trek too, and that person goes, "Oh, Star Trek, you want to talk Star Trek?"
I was like, oh, okay.
And so like that's just kind of that's always a great experience. But yeah, as soon as you told me that you had a channel, I was like, okay, subscribe. And you were making some good moves on that channel. I think didn't you have Way Back Wednesday back then too?
Yeah, we had, way back
Yeah,
Wednesday was in its infancy
yeah.
at that point, and it was really starting to become what it is now today, and kind of becoming what I wanted it to be, this regular basis, weekly show, like how you do your podcasts and all this stuff. I wanted something that people can look forward to, and it's kind of funny. I'll tell a very quick story similar to how we met, and how you're like, oh, somebody in chat that knows what's
Yeah,
going on.
yeah.
So I had a similar yet opposite experience
Okay.
during one of my very early live streams. My first ever live stream audience member was Coffee on Korriban, who I'm now
Oh,
very
wow.
good friends with.
Yeah, I know,
And
I know
I was
him.
playing Resident Evil 7, and he came into it and was asking about it because he knew nothing about Resident Evil but was interested. And what that did for me was it
Nice.
opened up the doorway where I was like, now I'm going to talk lore, and I'm going to make sure this guy really wants to get into this series. And we just started going, and then it just, grew into what it's been. But it's amazing when you can interact with your audience with similar likes and things like that, but also just finding people that are curious about a franchise. Like somebody coming in who's like, you know what, I don't know much about Spider-Man, but I found this channel. The guy's called Spidey Librarian. He's got to know what he's talking about. So it's,
A thing or two, yeah, yeah. And the nice thing here's the thing, like I actually am a librarian in real life, guys. Um, even if I don't know the answer, I'll find it. I will go find
yes,
it
you
for
do.
you,
You will find where that answer is.
Yeah, if it exists, I will find it, So,
If necessary, this guy will bust out the Dewey Decimal System.
yes, as we all do, Well, I've always been fascinated by Spider-Man's development in the video game medium. And I have looked into and played quite a few games that feature the wall crawler. And I have to say, his evolution in games has been pretty reflective of the evolution of video games and the gaming industry as a whole. You can say what you want about his evolution as a character in the comics, and I have met plenty of Spider-Man community members who have all kinds of opinions about where the comics are going today and stuff like that, you know. But no doubt, you cannot argue that as his comics life has gotten more intricate and complicated, so too has the complexity of Spider-Man's presence in video games, which in my opinion, I feel just works out to the advantage of
Mhm.
gamers in general. So, um, I guess it makes the most sense to begin at the beginning, where this all started. And you know, hopefully we all know about the very first Spider-Man game, but if you don't, well, I'll tell you this much. It's 40 years old. It is from
Yeah.
1982 and it is in on the Atari 2600. You've MatCave, you and I, we are gamers of a certain
Mhm.
age. I've played the Atari 2600. I had one in my house as a kid. Did
I
you?
still
Have
do.
you played? You still do? Oh my God. And it works?
Oh yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my God. That's awesome. That is
Um,
so awesome. Did you play the Spider-Man game on
I
the Atari?
have.
Okay.
I do have the Spider-Man game on the Atari 2600,
All right.
and that game came out the year I was born, 1982.
Oh wow.
And
Okay.
so Spider-Man on the Atari was one of the earliest games that I played because I've been playing games since I was one. My father handed me the Atari joystick when I was one, and
That's
then it's
awesome.
that's been the direction it's gone ever since. But I'll never forget playing that game for the first time, being psyched because the artwork on the sticker on the cartridge was great. It's a
Yeah.
great comic book style animated picture of Spider-Man. It's like, wow,
Isn't it like Spider-Man dodging a pumpkin bomb from the Green Goblin or
yeah,
something
something
like
like
that? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
It's really well done. It's, artwork on those cartridges were great. And then you fire up the game and you have it the thing that I think still makes it stand out is that it is one of those 2600 games
Hmm.
that stands apart from others because you do pretty much know at a glance what you're looking at.
Yeah.
Atari wasn't always good for that. Sometimes you're just a square, or you're a dot, or you're
Right.
whatever,
Right.
and you have to try to figure out what you're looking at. We actually had a red and blue representation figure
A
that was,
red and blue stack of pixels
yep,
that was
and this was your
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man,
Yep.
right? Oh, it's it's one of those games where you don't know what to do when you first fire it up. You got to figure it out. You're pretty much in a single screen in front of a building,
Yeah.
and your ultimate goal is to get to the top of this building.
Yes.
And you do get web swinging abilities, sort of.
Sort of.
It's
Yeah.
more of a vertical shot up with a single web, and then you try to latch onto the building and make your way up. Um, the problem with that was if you were not 100% precise with your timing, you fall to your doom.
Yes. Yes.
And
You know,
God forbid you hit a window with the web instead of the building side.
because then it just won't stick, which how does
Yeah.
that work, you know?
I
One
guess
of the
all the windows were open. I don't know.
Yeah, and one of the things that I remember, because again, I mean, I love this game for what it is. You know,
Mhm.
it is the first one. It's from the 2600 era. Video games, especially like home console gaming, that was in its infancy. And so, yes,
Mhm.
we can look back on it and be like, oh my God, how could you play this game? This is a terrible game. Yes, by today's standards, it is. and maybe even by the standards back then, maybe it would have been, but they were still figuring things out. And one of the things that I remember about that game that I'm just like, you would never have this today, is that you start out, I believe, on the building. You're like stuck to the walls. The only way to move is to shoot that web and then like pull yourself up,
Yep.
or swing or whatever. You can't wall crawl. You can't like just move around. You are
Yeah, no.
stuck in place.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no
no.
wall crawling. It was a vertical shot. I think there was a diagonal web shot, if I remember correctly. It
Yes,
was
yes,
either
there
diagonal or
was.
straight up, right?
Yes, you had both of those.
And
Yeah.
it seemed to be not only about getting your target right and hitting the correct portion of the building, but it was your timing of releasing the button and doing it. You had to have all this in play and be precise.
Yep.
And that was the thing about a lot of Atari games, because all you're working with is a joystick and a single
And a
button,
single button. That's it.
right?
That's it.
So they had to make this work somehow to have multiple abilities. And that's something, as we go today and talking about the evolution of Spider-Man in video games, just the idea of how to control Spider-Man in a video game, that in itself is probably the most impressive part of the evolution.
Oh yeah. No, no, I would agree. I would agree. Um, after that game, which again, you were supposed to get to the top of a building. There was like a little green goblin dude, and he was basically green and purple pixels. Just kind of going back and forth on his goblin glider, and if you touched him, you died. But like you wanted to also like touch the bombs that were nearby so that you could defuse them, I think, or something
Yeah,
like
you had
that.
to basically save the city from the explosion at
Yeah,
that point.
and it's like I think it's just one stage, and then once you completed it, you just started over, and that was the game. Like
Yep.
easy game. You can, well, I'm not going to say easy because that timing could be a problem. But once you beat that one stage, you were basically done. You had completed the game. You had 100%ed it. It was done.
Yeah.
Nowadays, trying to 100% a game is not only a matter of perspective, but my God, you can't argue that it's much more complex than that. So,
Oh yeah, games now are they're events. They're cinematic. They're movies practically at this point.
yeah.
And it's but back then, we had a simple objective, but it wasn't always that easy to accomplish that objective. The challenge was how fast can you get up this building? How accurate were your targets? How many times are you going to fall off this building and
Yes.
send Spider-Man to his doom?
Yes, I can't tell you how many times I killed him in
Yeah.
that game. And again, I was playing as like a 5 or a 6-year-old or something at that point, so but yeah, I remember that game very fondly.
Yeah.
Just because I remember as a kid being very into Spider-Man, so let's see. Really, I mean, there was at least one other game that came out, I think, on one of the early computers, and I never played that one, but it was I want to say it was more text-based. I don't know anything about it, but like it was made by a company that also, I think they did one for like Captain America and one for the Hulk as well. And I don't know much about them, but like after those games, we don't really see much until we get to, I think, the Nintendo Entertainment System era, when then we start to see Spider-Man come back onto the scene as a subject for video games. And I know that during this time, I know that like 10 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, people could say, like, oh my God, there's not been a good Spider-Man game in forever. There has not been a good Batman game in forever. And then, of course, like with Batman, we start getting the Arkham games. And then, like in 2018, well, we know what happens in 2018.
Yeah.
But during the 90s, we had a pretty, I would call it a renaissance of Spider-Man games, because there was a lot of stuff that really comes out and is very, very memorable from the get-go. I know that like at least some of your favorites, MatCave, and some of mine are from that era. Why don't you talk a little bit about a couple of yours?
Oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
that
that
16-bit era was definitely it's my favorite time of not just Spider-Man games, but a lot of superhero games in general. Like even in the 8-bit on the NES, we had like Spider-Man teaming up with the X-Men and stuff like that. But
Oh my God.
the 16-bit era was where I think we really started to feel like as gamers that we truly were playing as Spider-Man. Like
Yeah.
it brought it to life more, right? Because those 16-bit games, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, um, the style of the graphics looked animated. Like it looked like a comic book. It looked like a cartoon. You
Come to
know,
life, that you
yeah,
could
it
control.
truly came to life. And depending on the size of the pixels they were using in a game, it could look incredibly lifelike as far as the cartoons and comic books went.
Yeah.
The first one that I started playing on the 16-bit era that really drew me in was Spider-Man versus Kingpin. And
Oh God, yeah.
that game that game blew me away because of just the how much you could do. It wasn't just about playing as Spider-Man. You're playing as Peter Parker. Like you're taking pictures, you're sending
Yep.
photos to the Daily Bugles. That was a part of your thing. And so many featured bosses. It really was an amazing game that like it drew me in. I remember my cousin had it on the Genesis and we would play it all the time. And then I got the Sega CD, and a bunch of Genesis games started getting
The
versions
Sega
on the Sega
CD
CD where
tree.
they would
Yeah.
advance it, right?
Okay.
So this game stood out from the rest for me because it was the same great Genesis game, but the Sega CD not only added new music, like CD quality audio and enhancing the music, it added animated cutscenes that looked like you were watching animated comic book basically. It also added levels and a whole map system and bonus objectives. And that blew me away because at the time, you could almost look at this as the equivalent to DLC today.
Yeah, no, I could totally see
Right?
that. I could totally see that. I only played the Genesis version, so unfortunately I missed out on the Vulture and Mysterio fights, but
Oh, so good.
yeah, that's what I hear. I actually just replayed this about a week and a half ago.
Mhm.
Like I found an online emulator and I played it, and I actually did it for like a last week's episode where I just kind of did a retro review of the game.
Yep.
But such a good game. One of the big ones that I remember from adolescence because like it really did at the time feel like a big jump in the in the evolution of the character in the medium.
Mhm.
I could actually run around, I could punch, I could do a lower kick, I could do kind of a lame looking jump kick, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, like, this wasn't Double Dragon. It wasn't a beat 'em up or anything, but it was like a side-scrolling adventure. So I'm okay with that. But then you had web swinging, which I don't remember playing or having access to that in other games up until that point.
Mm.
I mean, I guess the Atari, but come on. That was the only way you could move, you know.
Yeah.
What else? We had there was yeah,
One of
there
the
was
really cool
oh,
things was how that game utilized because we've had different variations of Spider-Man over the years of how his abilities work. Some of his abilities in some versions it's natural, it comes from his body, the web. But in
right.
this case, it worked perfect for the game because they use the web shooters.
Yep.
So for a video game, it's like, okay, now I got to fill my web up. You got to keep the cartridge full, and it added
And that
a
takes
whole
money.
strategy element,
Yeah,
right?
that takes money. So to get money, I have to take pictures, you know.
Yep.
And that was great too. You know what I found really helpful during my most recent playthrough of that game?
Mm.
The web shield.
Oh, yes, yes.
I had to use that on so many occasions. Like because some of
It,
those fights I just don't remember them, you know, and so like
mhm.
whenever Donkey Kong comes after you, that's what I call the big ape in Sandman's
Oh, yeah,
park.
the park. Yep.
Yeah, I'm like, get away. I don't want to, and yeah, I had to use that shield quite a bit just to not take damage because he
Yep,
will
and
kill
it
you
eats up a
quick.
lot of the web fluid too. So it's like you gotta
Yeah.
pick and choose your moments.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, that's a great game. And then I want to talk about one game that I know is your favorite. Let's talk about Spider-Man and Venom in Maximum Carnage because
Yes.
I played that too, and I liked it too. I mean, that was a beat 'em up. That was a Double Dragon inspired like beat 'em up.
Hmm.
And it really like it actually took the not just the storyline, but some of the cutscene panels were taken directly from the Maximum Carnage comics storyline that was
Hmm.
popular at the time. Matt Cave, what are some of your favorite things about this game?
Speaking of the comic book panels in that, I always love that, like in the intro, seeing Carnage, being wheeled out. He's on the big stretcher thing. They're wheeling him out almost like Silence of the Lambs style. And
Yeah,
then he's talking trash to the guards and everything, all happening in the text bubbles and stuff. And then finally he just unleashes. And I remember that shot in the game. This is like the very beginning. You start
yeah,
up the game and Spider-Man and Venom swing by the Sega logo and stuff, and then you get this cutscene, basically, for lack of a better term,
right.
and then he busts out as Carnage, where it just looks like he's coming out of the panel, and it's on. It's
Yeah.
on like
It's
Donkey
like,
Kong right
oh
now. It's
no, oh
just,
no, he's loose.
but then you get to the first level, and the first thing that stands out is that they used large pixels for the characters in this. So they really popped. They really were bold on screen and stood out more than in prior games. Like Spider-Man looked good in Spider-Man versus Kingpin,
Hmm.
but he looks so animated and so accurate in Maximum Carnage in just a way that's in all honesty, in that era of gaming, 16-bit and even into the bit of the 32-bit stuff, I don't think he's ever looked better. Like Spider-Man looked great, and then this game also took, not only was it following a very specific storyline, but it advanced the control scheme as far as how we control. Because we're in the beat 'em up style, very like Streets of Rage and Double Dragon
Right.
style,
Hmm.
but the controls, that's where it got crazy because not only can you shoot web and punch and kick and do a jump kick, but now you have your web swinging back. But the web swinging itself, like you needed accuracy and you had to hook on to something and you had control. You could swing and kick. You could do all
Yes.
kinds of combinations.
Yes.
Um, and I grew up playing I had the Sega, I had the Genesis, and it was the 3-button controller, for the most part. So you had to do all kinds of funky combinations with the game, trying to get these swings to work right. But then the 6-button controller came out. And that's one of the games that Sega took full advantage of, and they expanded the controls. So now you had A, B, and C, but you also had X, Y, and Z. And they put the swing controls up there. So all of a sudden, the
Oh,
game
okay.
opened up to being able to have more control and smoother and just it.
That
I've
is
never gone back.
that is
Once you go 6-button on
fascinating.
Maximum Carnage, that's the way.
See, and the thing is, I've never like I had a Genesis growing up.
Mhm.
I never did the Sega CD or anything, but like the 6-button controller is just something that I have never done. Like I've never experienced the 6-button controller for that system. So and I mean, let's just lay it out on the line here, guys.
Mhm.
Maximum Carnage is considered a pretty damn difficult game even by today's standards. Like a lot of YouTubers will go back and play this game and still be like, yeah, this one I kind of went away with my tail between my legs. So
Mhm.
anything you can do to make that easier is, in my opinion, a really nice thing. It's a gift, you know.
It it makes like one of the early levels where you have to get up this building, but Electro is firing beams at you. Um, Being able to have more control over your swing, because it alerts you like which direction this is gonna come from, but you have to be able to get out of the way in time. And then when you finally get to the top, you deal with Doppelganger, and he's like going nuts to beat the hell out of you once you get to the top. Like the
I,
game is relentless.
no, it
When
is.
you clear one spot, your next thing is right in your face.
No, it definitely was. And I remember one of the, I think, wasn't one of the animations on one of Spider-Man's moves, because I always preferred to play
Mhm.
Spider-Man, surprise. And
Mhm.
wasn't one of the animations on his move a combo where like he would shoot out webs from both sides of him and then yank the two people and
Yep.
into each other
You
in
could
front
pull
of
them
him?
in, the guys with like the trench coats and stuff. You could
Yeah.
pull them in and then get them with a kick. He also had this spin move, but I believe if you did the spin move, it actually took life away. Like it cost you part of your life meter to do the special attack.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. No.
Yep.
Again, like it's a game that I played and enjoyed, but I never got very far in. I have no shame in saying I never completed that game. And I mean, if anyone has and you want to go ahead and dunk on me, hey, go ahead. You are clearly superhuman, whereas I am not yet. So,
It's a rough game. And actually, I should have brought it over here. I got to show you the. Give me a second. I got to show you the edition of it that I have. Hold
Okay.
on one second.
I mean, a couple of other games from the 16-bit era that I remember. Oh God, did anyone play Spider-Man and the X-Men in Arcade's Revenge? Because I remember buying that game and being really excited to play it, and then I played it, and I was just like, I was really let down. I really it was a side scroller, which was fine, but like
Mhm.
you didn't have nearly the kind of versatility that you had in Spider-Man versus the Kingpin. And then like you played Wolverine and Storm and some other X-Men, but like they were just like stuck in these situations where like you had limited use of them,
Either when
where
Arcade's Revenge.
yeah, we're talking, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
Arcade's Revenge.
yeah.
I mean, it's not a terrible game, but it's not a good game either, I would
Mhm.
argue. I
That's
think.
one of those games that I definitely go back to it. Actually, I have it sitting right.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Oh, I wonder if this green screen's gonna mess with this. So I got Maximum Carnage,
Maximum Carnage shows up a lot better than the arcade one did, just so you know.
but the reason I was so psyched of having this one all these years is because it's the red cartridge.
Ooh.
And this thing, let's see how well that comes up. Yeah.
Oh no, it
The
comes up
artwork
really
and
nicely.
everything
Yeah,
for
that looks
Carnage.
good.
I love this game so much.
Okay, I
It
have to I have to ask, is the red cartridge, is that one like, does that go for a mint on eBay or something, or
Oh, it probably does, because
yeah.
that was the one that was more limited release. Like you could get them places, um, but for the most part, Genesis cartridges were just the black cartridge
Right.
with the sticker
Yes.
on it.
Yes, they were.
Every once in a while, you had some cartridges that were a little bit different for special editions of stuff, and this was one that. Oh, you know what I just noticed on this? This has a rating on it.
Really?
MA13, mature audiences.
Really? Okay.
Where is it? It's in the bottom corner there.
Yeah,
It's
I
not
see
showing
it.
up
I
now.
see it.
Um,
I
wow.
That's crazy.
I mean,
Like,
this was a pretty violent game when you think about
oh
it.
yeah, and I mean the storyline in the comics was pretty dark too, but I mean like it wasn't
Yeah.
it wasn't like graphic though.
No. Meanwhile, Arcade's Revenge has a rating of GA, appropriate for all audiences, general audiences.
Yeah, well, and it shows.
But
Um,
Carnage was like there were, the little cutscenes, the comic panels and stuff. It
mhm.
was of Carnage, you know, unaliving people.
Yes, no, it was. It was. I'm gonna take a second and talk to catch up in the chat a little bit here. Black Dragon says that growing up, Spider-Man always had to use cartridges. It wasn't until 2002 that I even considered webs coming from his body. Yeah, and Sam
Mhm.
Raimi had pretty much everything to do with that.
Yeah.
And it's funny too because I fall on the side of mechanical web shooters. you can argue that I'm old school about it, and you'd be right. Um, but really, I mean, while I personally think that mechanical web shooters are the superior way to go, like there's a whole group of people who grew up with Spider-Man and those movies and everything. That's their version of Spider-Man. And
Yeah.
I completely respect that. If you like organic, that's great. I like mechanical. It's not like I'm never gonna watch something because Spider-Man has organic web shooters. I'm just gonna be like, oh, okay, they're making this decision. But like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's all good. So, Sith Apple, I think, in reference to Maximum Carnage, says a lot of swearing and raging.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
comes with that game. It's definitely it goes with the territory. And I'll tell you,
sure.
on the topic of the web swinger shooters, the biggest reason why I think the web shooters are superior in as far as the version what I prefer is because that leans towards the technological side and the
It does.
genius of Peter Parker. Like
Yeah,
he created this stuff, he built this stuff.
right.
So
And
taking that away kind of takes away a big element of his character.
the counter argument that I tend to get from people about that, though, is that, like they like the idea that anybody can be Spider-Man, and so like
Mm.
the idea that anybody could get the webs by making them organic is appealing to them as well.
Mm.
And that's fine. That's fine. I like the idea of a smart kid falling into some spider powers and having the ability to supplement them, though. I think that,
Yeah.
and yeah, I get it. I totally get it. Let's see. Solid Snake says that he had the red one as well and all the gold Zelda cartridges on the NES, and that he wishes that he'd saved them.
Oh,
I feel like that about my comic book collection, my friend. I know how you feel. I feel your pain.
yeah.
And then Black Dragon is asking if I've ever seen the 70s live action TV show with Nicholas Hammond. Yes, I have. I've seen it. It's only been a couple of episodes, but I remember like when I was again in an adolescent, I remember seeing like on the little TV guides that came with the newspapers, I would scour them for programming to watch. And I saw a Spider-Man show and I saw that it wasn't a cartoon. And I'm like, what? And so like it came on at this ridiculously early time, like on PBS or something like that. And I just was like, I had to watch this. And so I remember watching it and I'm like, oh my God, like I mean, one, I remember thinking, okay, well, this isn't really how I envisioned a Spider-Man live action show. And then two, part of me is also thinking, but this was back in the olden days, and so it's like I get that they probably just have, they have to work with what they've got. And
I
so
used to
yeah.
watch that with my father, and then between that and the original Incredible Hulk TV show with
Oh
Bill Bixby,
yeah. That I remember.
I was watching that constantly. I mean, we
Ah,
even had
God.
appearances of Thor in that show. I mean, this was
Right. Yeah. Yeah, no. And I mean they were going for those connections even back then, And
yeah.
and I love that. I love that.
Mm.
Black Dragon says that he has them all digitally. Black Dragon, let me ask you something because I literally just had this thought the other day and I'm not the only person that has had this thought, but tell me what you think of this. And MatCave, you too.
Mm.
So, um are we all familiar with the first Morlun arc that JMS did during Amazing Spider-Man, where Peter basically is basically told that he's a spider totem and that the spider that bit him was going to give him those powers regardless of whether or not it was radioactive or anything like that. Are you familiar with this, Matt Cave?
Oh no, not
Oh,
like this
okay.
was like foretold.
Okay. All I'm going to say at this point is read it. It is one of the best Spider-Man stories, in my opinion, that you will ever read. It is an iconic story. Okay.
Okay.
Morlun is a very different type of foe that he had never encountered up to that point. I know they redid him again in Spider-Verse and he wasn't as cool then.
Mm.
But think about this. Think about this. In that story, Peter is told all of this by an older man named Ezekiel Sims. Ezekiel is an older man, and Ezekiel proves it to Peter by clinging to a wall in front of him and basically saying, because you're not the only one. And
Wow.
essentially, you go out to find some other things about Ezekiel Sims, but you know what I want? I want a recreation of that story live action, and I want Nicholas Hammond to play Ezekiel Sims.
Oh, that would be amazing.
I want that so
To bring it
badly.
full
I didn't
circle.
think I didn't it didn't cross my mind until like literally yesterday or the day before, and it was suddenly like an epiphany just went off, and I was like, this needs to happen. Like, because he's like 73. He could play Ezekiel Sims, and I want it. Like, it was something I didn't know that I needed until it just randomly came across. And I'm like, that could work, and it needs to work. So
That is fantastic. Oh, I love that. I gotta find that story. I gotta read that.
yeah, no, it's a great story. And then and Black Dragon, you say you have them all digitally. How do you have access to them? Are they on disc? Are they on Voodoo? Let me know because I want to watch this stuff. I haven't seen most of that show, and I definitely want to watch more of it. So
Mm.
let me know how you got them so that I can maybe get access to them as well. So okay, and as you guys can see, we ramble a bit. But I like to think that it's fun rambling. We're still talking Spider-Man, we're still talking all this cool stuff. But let's try to get back to video games. I want to talk about one more game from that era that was not on consoles, and that would be the arcade beat 'em up. It was just
Yep.
called Spider-Man or The Amazing Spider-Man, and essentially, it is a beat 'em up, much like Maximum Carnage, but much easier. Your main
Mm.
foe is Doctor Doom, which I thought was interesting. And he has basically gotten all of Spider-Man's foes to come out of the shadows and try to beat him up. Venom is there. Uh, Green Goblin is there. Hobgoblin is there. Sandman, Electro, Lizard. And it's just this really nice little showcase of all of Spider-Man's foes and some interesting allies. Now, the one that makes the most sense is Black Cat. She could be there as a Spider-Man ally. But then Hawkeye is also there. And then
Okay.
Namor, the Submariner, is there, and I'm just like, what? Have you played this? Have you played this game?
This one I haven't played. I'm actually looking at it right now. Um,
So
it's actually
it
it's
is
funny.
an
I'm looking at
arcade
it's
game. Yeah, it is an
yeah, and
arcade
I'm
game.
looking at screenshots of it. The style actually looks very much like Maximum Carnage.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of it. I mean, there are definitely some parallels to it, but
Mm.
I think that this is a this is a game that if you miss it, on the whole,
Mm.
you're probably not missing much. But this is just definitely a fun kind of addition to the game that was not a home console version. And
Yeah. Surprised
it's
they wouldn't have ported that because
I know,
there's another
right?
game in the same. I would love it if they had a home console version of that. But in the same style with almost the same, probably the same graphic engine as well. Um, they did a Death of Superman game in that style,
Okay, all
and
right. I
that
didn't know
game was
that.
actually landed. It was in the arcades, but landed on the Super Nintendo. And
Huh.
it's a great game, by the way. It follows the Death of Superman storyline all the way to the multiple Supermen like that come out with the.
I had no clue about this. This is
Yeah, it's a
fascinating. Go
fun beat
on.
'em up.
Yeah, no, it sounds like um but yeah, this is just kind of one of those games that it was like I kind of wish they would do a port of it at some point. Bring it
Mhm.
to home consoles. I bring it to the PS5, bring it to the Switch. Just put it on there so we can play it. But I think a lot of it is You know, you go to retro arcades, right?
Hmm.
Okay, at some point they'll probably get it in. And what I would do is talk to the regular retro arcade that you go to and tell them, hey, when you guys get this in, please email me because I want to play this. And
You know,
it's fun. It's fun.
because I
You'll
know the guy that runs the one that's near us. He actually just opened up a second retro arcade
okay.
in
I
a
feel like I feel
bigger
like
location.
I feel like you need to make a request of this person
Yeah,
then,
I'm gonna reach out to him and make a request because
Okay.
that's a big one.
Yeah, no. I think you'll enjoy it. It's if you like the arcade, like X-Men beat 'em up and the Avengers beat 'em up,
Hmm.
like those were arcade games. Those are great. You'll like Spider-Man then too. You
It's
know,
awesome.
it was just a bunch of companies with these licenses releasing this stuff, and it was wonderful. So, what are some of the more like iconic ones? I know that I've only played like there's a PlayStation 1 Spider-Man, and I've played a little bit of it. Have you played that, and how much of it have you played?
Yes, that's a big one for a lot of reasons because that first PlayStation 1 Spider-Man game basically set the template for what Spider-Man games are after that and
I
what we have
remember
now.
I remember it was Cameo City.
Oh my God. Yeah, it
Daredevil
was,
showed up, the Punisher showed, and it was just like quick cameos. You didn't get to play them, but they were
you know,
there, you
they
know.
were there. Yeah. That was a big thing too with a lot of the Spider-Man games. There were a lot of cameos. One of them going actually back a little bit before that PS1 release
Uh-huh.
was on the 32X, and this was a game. It was called Web of Fire,
Okay, I've
and
heard of Web of Fire, but I don't know much more about it than the
Web
title.
of Fire is, if you thought Maximum Carnage was difficult, Web of Fire is even more difficult, but for all the wrong reasons.
Oh,
It's
really?
you talk about taking steps backwards, right? So Maximum Carnage
Oh.
came first. It was this beautiful game. Yes, it was challenging, but it was doable. Web of Fire went a different route, trying to focus more on how much they could throw into the game with the 32X
Okay.
and making like backgrounds stand out and all kinds of like fun, stuff. And it seems like they forgot about, actually controlling Spider-Man and being able to do his moves and all this stuff. And I'll tell you, even with a six-button controller, that game is a nightmare to try and control. And don't get me wrong, it looked, you know what it was? They went with a dark and gritty look. So that was a big thing with the game. It wasn't as bright and colorful as Maximum
Okay.
Carnage. It was darker, grittier, which was on purpose because the story was darker and grittier.
So was this a
But
beat 'em up? Was it a side scroller? What was it?
it's a side scroller
Okay.
with a little bit of beat 'em up elements, but mostly a side scroller
Okay.
and a bit of platforming. So
Okay.
we strayed from what Maximum Carnage did. You know what it is? It's closer to Spider-Man versus Kingpin, that style,
Okay.
but
All right.
much more side scroller, like going left to right and all this stuff. But they added elements into it that were just for the purpose of because they could, and it overall ruined the game, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That game is tough. But when we got to the 64-bit era, when we have the world of N64 and PS1, that Spider-Man game, it basically laid the groundwork for what we have now with the idea of having a 3D world to explore, having lots of cameos, having giving the player real choice as far as what you're going to do, but also really feel like you're playing as Spider-Man. Because once we
Hmm.
got into that 3D world, especially with um, when we jumped into the movie tie-in games, the Sam Raimi films, that opened it up like amazing. Like when I remember playing
Well,
the
those are
Spider-Man
those are the
2
first
game,
open world games, right?
yeah, those were
Yeah.
the truly first open world games. And this PS1 game was like just on the cusp of that. Like we were so close. And
I
there
remember
was
the
even
I remember Fog. in the background
Mhm.
a lot
Yeah.
because that was probably beyond the PlayStation One's like power to render all of that
Yeah.
distance in the background, which is fine. But it was just kind of one of those things that I remember that about it. It was like, yeah, okay, all right, we got a lot of
Yeah.
fog in New York, so
The I'm trying to find a screenshot of it. Why is there no screenshots for this? Because the sequel to this one was really good too. It was about Electro, and it kind of took that whole style, kind of furthering the that direction that we were heading in. There was a lot of handheld games that came out around this time too, but it was the really the main releases that were pushing this forward. But Spider-Man and then Spider-Man 2 Enter Electro uh, gave the players more control than we ever had over the web slinger. Like it was, you could truly feel like we were playing a Spider-Man. But I'll tell you that when that Sam Raimi film came out and we get Tobey Maguire Spider-Man and then a video game comes out of it, that changed everything.
yeah,
That
no,
was
it
the
did.
world of gaming as far as not just Spider-Man. I think superhero video games in general
Oh yes,
were changed
no,
from that point
absolutely.
forward,
Hmm. No,
right?
it
Like,
did. And I remember, so to my everlasting shame, and there's quite a few of these games that I've never played. Spider-Man 2 is one of the big ones that I just completely
mhm.
missed. I never got to play it.
Mm,
I do plan to fix that at some point because as you know, I stream a lot of Spider-Man gameplay on my YouTube channel. And so once I'm finished platinuming the PS4 version and then playing through the sequel that comes out soon,
mhm.
I'm probably going to go on a kick where I just start looking for older Spider-Man games to play on stream on my channel. And on my list is Spider-Man 2 and probably the Spider-Man 2, what is it called? Enter Electro or something like that.
Yeah, Enter
like
Electro.
like
Yep.
those games, like all of those games, the PlayStation 1, the first one, like I only got so far. I need to finish it, and
Yep.
I want to make it this goal that I complete like as many Spider-Man games as I reasonably can, maybe not
Yeah.
Maximum Carnage, maybe not Web of Fire, but the ones that mortals can complete. you know
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Boy,
um
I'll take Maximum Carnage over Web of Fire any day.
Oh wow. Okay. I'll definitely let you know my thoughts on that when I play it. So, um but yeah, let's talk about the open world games. So, I don't remember if the first one was. I've only done a little bit of research into the early part of that era, but for me, the first open world Spider-Man game that I remember playing was Web of Shadows. Did you ever play
Hmm.
that?
Is that the one that has Wolverine cameo in it?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, yes. Yep. I think I
That
played that on the GameCube.
Uh, was it on the GameCube? Oh, okay. You know what? I can totally believe that. I I don't remember which system I played it on. Oh well.
Web of
Anyways,
Shadows was. Oh no, you know what? I must have played it on PS2. Oh
okay.
wow, this was on a lot. Web of Shadows came out on the Nintendo DS, the
Which
PS2,
I've played the
PS3, the
yeah.
PSP, the Wii, and the Xbox 360.
Okay,
Wow.
then I've played it. Then I probably played it on the Wii, and I've
Mm,
actually played the DS version too, which is essentially a different game because it's a side
mm.
scroller.
Yeah.
So yeah, they make different versions of games for different, like for the handhelds and stuff, but they still call them the same thing, which I feel is a little bit misleading.
Mhm.
But like they kind of stick to the plot a little bit, but there were so many changes. The nice thing about Web of Shadows is that not only because you basically you had access to the symbiote Spider-Man
Mm,
costume and the powers that came with it. Symbiote Spider-Man was a lot stronger than, regular Spider-Man. But the really cool thing about it, you could switch from one to the other on a dime. And so you could execute a combo starting off in the red and blue suit and then switch while you're executing the combo and finish with some symbiote moves. And let me tell you, that made for a very unique and I would argue very satisfying gameplay experience.
Yeah.
Um, I would also say that one of the more significant features of Web of Shadows was they actually tried their hand at a morality system. You could actually make choices in the game that
Mm.
would affect the outcome. Like, you can choose to leave MJ and go with Black Cat, essentially. Like that's like the more evil version, of course,
Yeah.
but like you had a light side dark side kind of system going on, kind of like you had in KOTOR essentially.
Mhm.
And I don't know, like I liked it okay. But it definitely introduced some variety and some replayability. So what do you remember about the game, and what did you like or dislike about it?
I remember the first time I saw that on a shelf and seeing, because the picture, he had Spider-Man like kind of in the main image, but I remember Venom being on there. But the thing that drew me in was Logan. It was Wolverine.
Oh yeah,
I
no,
was
I
like,
get
wait a minute. I was like, Wolverine
it.
is in this new Spider-Man game? I was like, I have to play this.
Yeah, yeah,
And I love the animation style of that game because it took it back into uh being more comic book like versus movie like, because we have these open world games that are emulating the films, and you got a certain look and feel to those, but we were getting more back into the animated style of Spider-Man, and I like that, especially for the other characters that were cameoed in that. But having those morality features in there, 'cause that was big at that time. Tons
hmm
of games are coming out with some sort of a morality something, even
right.
like games like Red Dead Redemption. You had, you would either get a bounty on you, or you had fame where you were honorable and stuff like that, or there was all kinds of things in games at that time where the player had the choice of how you're going to handle this.
Yeah.
And when you take a superhero character where
hmm
you're deciding basically who to save and who not to save, or who to hang out with and who you're going to team up with, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, BioWare was such a great company for things like that, with games like KOTOR and Mass Effect and stuff like that, all these decision-based games. So when you get, it was rare to have the action style games like Spider-Man and also have a decision-based system in there. So when you got to mix the two, it was a lot of fun. But getting that, not only that, but being able to explore the area, right? Because
hmm
we had our choice of going places. The movie tie-in ones went even those went ridiculous with the open world. That you could spend hours upon hours just swinging around the city if you wanted. And,
Right.
it was like,
And I
I
and I
think
may have
Web of
done that
Shadows
a
was a
time
little
or two.
more guiding you. Yeah.
Yeah. No. But yeah, no, that's of course a big thing, which I think when you move into games like I think like Shattered Dimensions and Edge of Time, which are later
Mm.
Spider-Man games, but they're still kind of on rails in the sense that
Mhm.
you go do this stage and then you go do this stage. It's not an open world experience. I think that was a significant issue for a lot of gamers at the time. They're like, hey, we've had a taste of this open world thing and we want it. Why did you take it away
Yeah.
from us? Which, I think open world definitely has its appeal and everything. I don't think you always have to do open world with Spider-Man though. And I mean, I would argue that Shattered Dimensions is easily a top five game. If if
Oh yeah.
if you count the more recent games kind of all under one umbrella, because they're gonna
Mhm.
take like the top two or three spots.
Yeah.
But
But there's plenty of players that don't lean towards the open world stuff. They want a story that's objective to objective, get from point A to
right,
point B.
right,
Which I get, I totally understand. And these games can be that if you make it that way. Even the most recent Spider-Man games, you could sit there and just focus on the main storylines and just go.
yeah. No,
But
you
there's just
absolutely
so
can.
much around you that you could
There
do.
is, there is. Did you ever play Ultimate Spider-Man?
which generation was that? I'm
That
trying to
one, I
remember.
believe, was let's see, I believe that was PlayStation 2 and Xbox 360.
Mm,
That wouldn't you talk about a return to animation. That was a
yeah.
very like it was sort of contiguous with the Ultimate Spider-Man comics that were being published at the time. There was
Okay.
a like you could see Mark Bagley's artwork on these guys. You could definitely feel Brian Michael Bendis's story and his storytelling style coming through in this. You're playing a very young Peter. You've basically got
Mhm.
access to all of Manhattan, kind of like you do in like PS4 Spider-Man or some of the other open world games. But like it's cartoon. It looks like I
Mhm.
mean, talk about a comic book come to life. This is like a 3D comic book come to life. Did you ever
Yeah,
play
I'm
it?
looking at screenshots of this, even just the cover art of it, because this is that look of Spider-Man where he's, obviously Spider-Man's always slim, but he's like yacked in
Yeah,
this
he's
one.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, no. It's a yeah, it's very like I don't know, you're playing a young in still in high school
mm,
kid who's, you get some humor about that. You get some humor with a snark and everything, but like you could go around exploring New York City. You could choose to 100% it. You could choose to stick to just the story and see how that plays out. And I remember playing it. Oh, and in this game, you could play certain segments of the game as Venom. Like
oh,
you could,
sick.
yeah.
Always
And
love that.
Venom had this like ridiculous like high jump thing that he would use to get around. He would be continually losing health, so you'd have to go and like absorb people into you in order to replenish your health.
Yep.
And so yeah, you got to be this like killing machine for certain segments of the game. So
Oh, I love that.
but
Now, I'll
yeah.
tell you, around the same time, the same era in gaming, and mostly in the world of arcades at this point, obviously eventually ported to consoles. But in that, like, keeping to the animated style of Spider-Man and Venom as well, some games that always drew me in because of that character were the Marvel versus Capcom games.
Oh
And
man.
I would play as Venom like all the time in that because he had some powerful moves in like especially Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Like Venom for me, like he was my go-to character because I felt like I was unstoppable as Venom. But then you had Spider-Man also who could actually web swing in
Yeah.
a fighting game.
Yeah.
Like that just blew me away.
It, the thing is, and I don't have, because I do like my fighting games and I do like my Marvel characters. I have not really had much experience with the Capcom versus Marvel games. I think I played
Mm,
three briefly, and
okay.
I was frustrated because it was just much harder than I expected it to be. But with that said, I do remember I think I played like when they were like X-Men versus Capcom games or something like that.
Yep.
And those were always fun. It's just that I kind of stopped and then came back to Marvel versus Capcom 3 and was like, okay, wow, there's a lot going on here that I need to,
It was a
I need to get used to, essentially.
Yeah, that was a big difference when it got to that one. I'd say this two was my favorite one in that whole series. Like it's the later ones get a little nuts. But Marvel vs. Capcom 2, I think it had, for me personally, I think it had the best gameplay, it had the best look with the animation, and the music was killer. Like I remember you could hear this system when you go into an arcade, you could hear Marvel vs. Capcom 2 like from across the arcade. I was like,
That's
"Oh man."
great.
You
That's
know,
great.
it was so good, man. But the having those two characters playable in it, among all the other Marvel characters that were there, Captain America, Hulk, and all them. Um, but it just, I don't know, getting to like pit Spider-Man against Mega Man was just hilarious to me.
Yeah.
Like, it's like where else are you gonna see something like this?
No, you definitely like taking characters from this franchise against characters from another franchise or teaming up with them in some cases. Like
Yep.
yeah, no, like I see the appeal and I definitely would like more of that experience. I'm gonna need to bone up on my I'm gonna need to bone up on my controls and my timing in order to really get better at those games. So I played Injustice recently, like, and by
Yep.
recently I mean within the last like 5 years or so. And I
Mhm.
remember like I think I kept it on normal difficulty. I think I was able to get through the storyline and it was, it was fun, but it was also like I'm gonna like if I want to do the more advanced stuff, I gotta get good, basically. And that's
Yeah.
gonna take some time. So but yeah, no, the Marvel versus Capcom games are games that I will probably at some point try to experience, but it's going to come after I have probably played most of the games that feature Spider-Man as the main character.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you're looking for other games where Spider-Man features and is not a main character, I mean, I would say look at the Lego games. Those are fun.
Yes.
There's
And you just made me think of another one too, but on the Lego games, um, even just like the most recent what did they, it wasn't the not the Avengers Lego game that was based off of the movie, but the other Avengers Lego game that was, more like the comics and stuff like that. And you
just
could have
Lego,
Spider-Man in there.
just Lego Marvel superheroes, I think.
Yeah, 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 that
Yeah,
one.
and
Oh
then that
man,
one got a
Spider-Man
sequel.
was
So
it did get a sequel, yes.
so.
But Spider-Man was honestly my favorite character to play as in
Yeah.
that. Like it just he was his abilities like using the web and everything. Not only could you web swing and everything, but his web would be used for like solving the puzzles of
Yes.
getting through an area. I was
Yes.
like, this is just so cool. Like I would always go back and forth between Spider-Man and Hulk. I was like, I'm solving puzzles with Spider-Man and I'm bashing through a wall with Hulk.
I mean, we've all got our skills. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, those were really good. And it's, Spidey, my focus tends to be on like the Spider-Man games that feature him as the main character. If I stream,
Mhm.
say, Lego Marvel superheroes, that's probably going to go on my gaming channel. Like where if you ever want to find me there, you can see me play Elden Ring and all kinds of other stuff. But like the Spider-Man stuff is kind of like that's just where my heart is. Like I want to do the stuff where he's the focus. And but I will play the other stuff where he's part of a team. I would really like
Mhm.
them to do, and I don't know if we'll ever get this, Lego Spider-Verse.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Just think about how cool that would be, you
The
know?
possibility, because we know how advanced those Lego games can get. They get
Hmm.
pretty crazy, and the stuff they put in there as Easter eggs and everything. The Lego games with every franchise that they've basically collaborated with, they've expanded on it in a lot of ways and make it very approachable for any gamer of any age. I just I love the fact that I can enjoy a Lego game as much as my kids enjoy it. Like just, it's just so much fun and then playing together with them. Like the most recent Lego Star Wars game that came out took on telling stories of all nine films and just really this massive release. So when you get another big world like Marvel, where you have so many characters that you can work with, and then so many locations that you could take place in, and then the teaming up, like I remember, one of my favorite team up games was Marvel Alliances, Ultimate Alliance.
Oh God, I
Um,
love that game so much.
right, the top-down one, and you got your
Yes.
squad, and
Yes. The first
Spider-Man was
one.
just
The first one is the
awesome. The
best one.
first one, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I'll never forget that opening cutscene of that first game where they're all figuring out how they're gonna take down this big like machine coming in and stuff, and then Spidey's cracking jokes because that's what he does, and then Wolverine just comes flying in like a madman, ripping stuff apart, and Spidey looks at the camera, he's like, "That guy scares me."
Yeah. And I think Captain America was just kind of like,
Yeah,
like yeah.
yeah, that guy's nuts.
No. Did you
Um,
did you ever play Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions?
I didn't play Shattered Dimensions. I
One
remember
of the
that when that was being released, and it was a game that I remember wanting, and then I just never got it.
So one of the things that I loved about it is that you played four different Spider-Men. You played
Mhm.
comic Spider-Man essentially. You played
You know,
Ultimate Spider-Man, but he had the symbiote suit. You
the
played.
Noir one was in there, right?
I'm sorry. Yeah,
The like Spider-Man Noir. Yeah, yeah,
Spider-Man
yeah.
Noir, and then Spider-Man 2099.
Oh,
Here's
sick.
here's what I really loved about this game. First of all, I think that as a Spider-Man experience for a non or for a fairly linear like non-open world game, a lot of moves, a lot
Mm.
of web use, and just a really overall good experience. But the thing that I love the most about it, the four Spider-Men are voiced by voice actors who voiced Spider-Man in previous properties.
Oh, nice.
So Amazing Spider-Man is voiced by Neil Patrick Harris, who voiced him in
Nice. He's the
Spider-Man the new
beginning.
animated series.
I love it.
Spider-Man Noir, I believe, is voiced by Christopher Daniel Barnes from the 90s animated series. Ultimate Spider-Man, I believe that's Josh Keaton from Spectacular Spider-Man.
Okay.
And then Spider-Man 29 is voiced by Dan Gilvezan from, I believe, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends.
Nice.
And you know, I mean, if you don't know that, it's still a good game. But if you're like a dyed-in-the-wool Spider fan like me, that's just like that's just so touching. You know, it's like, oh my
Yeah.
God, they got these guys together for this project, and you know, and you face off against some really interesting foes. Amazing. He first faces off against Craven the Hunter, which was pretty cool.
That's awesome. Especially since we're about to see that character in the new
Yeah, yeah.
game.
Noir, I think the first person he faces off against in his world is Hammerhead, who is not Hammerhead from the comics. He's like mutated and has like gun arms and stuff, and
Oh my
he's unbelievable. And I think you also face off against the Vulture in that world, who is like a cannibal, and I believe is the person that killed Uncle Ben in that universe too. So it's just all kinds of nutty, you know. But that's a really good game. I never finished it, but I it's one of those games that like I think it's on my Steam account, and I think it's one of those games that I'll get to eventually. And that I think there's some kind of issue with save games on Steam for that one.
God.
So but there's a workaround and I'll figure it out over time. But it's one of those games that I want to get back to at some point. So
Oh, that sounds awesome. Yeah, I didn't realize that it was on PC. If that's still available, I gotta check that out.
it might be. If do you use Steam?
Yep.
Yeah, just go check the store. I
Yeah.
think it's still there. So um, what what would you say? Because we've obviously covered a whole lot of stuff, like almost up to the present day. But I mean, like you know, I my kind of thesis for this episode is that essentially Spider-Man's portrayal in video games really does a fantastic job of mirroring the kind of evolution of video games and the gaming
Mhm.
industry over time. And and there's one game that we haven't discussed that I want to bring up eventually, but I would like kind of your thoughts on this before I go into that. Like we've seen Spider-Man go from just if you want to move him, you have to web swing to being able to stick to walls at at will and stuff like that. How do you feel that Spider-Man has done in terms of evolving along with video games?
I think the character of Spider-Man a is used as a great example of how games have evolved over time, especially when it comes to immersion and the ability to control a character. Because when you think about Spider-Man, there's so much that he can do as a character. And to be able to capture that, not only the look, but the abilities, it in some cases pushes a system to its limits. And being able to navigate a game and do all of these things, you need you need enough buttons to be able to do this. You also have to be able to make the combinations of buttons being used easy enough that someone can play it and not be frustrated, because we've all played games where the combos just kill it, and it's just like, it's too difficult. But if you can seamlessly control a character and feel like you're truly in control, like the 2018 Spider-Man is the prime example of that,
Oh yeah.
where the use of the trigger buttons and just everything else in the combination of, because when you think about swinging in that game, the controls are so advanced at this point, but so intuitive that you could do tricks in the air and you could do stunts and zipping to one spot to another, and you feel so much in control that the moves you pull off are like they're cinematic in itself. And all you did was go from one building to another, and you're like, wow, like it's
But
just
what an experience, you know?
yeah.
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 No,
And like you
I
said, going from the Atari, from just being able to web swing sort of up a building to now, and what you're capable of doing. What an insane example of evolution of gaming in general. Just to be able to be Spider-Man.
yeah.
That's the key. With any game, you want to feel like you're that character. And we're at a point where, honestly, they nailed it.
Oh
And
yeah.
in my opinion, they technically don't even ever have to change that.
I mean, it's hard to disagree with you on that. Certainly, like everything that I've seen of Marvel's Spider-Man 2 that's forthcoming, look, I
Mm.
mean, this game looks like heaven to me, you know, and the PS4 version was heaven to me. I liked it so much that I bought the remastered version when it came out, and oh God, talk about evolution of video games. One thing that I like about the remastered is the mods. You know, you can
Oh,
modify the
yes.
game, and my favorite thing to do is to go look for like these whacked out zany skins. My one short that I
Mm.
recently published, I was you save Mary Jane. It's that scene where she jumps off a building and then you have to swing in and save her. And I was wearing the Fred Flintstone skin at the time. And so instead of this blue and red blur that catches her, it's an orange blur. And then
That's
you
unbelievable.
see this nightmare version, this nightmare fuel version of Fred Flintstone that Mary Jane is like saying, "You're amazing" too while you're swinging away.
Swinging in like yabba dabba doo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think when I did that stream, I think the title was, "All right, guys, let's yabba dabba do this," because
Nice.
I just played as Fred Flintstone the whole time, and it's just really funny to see stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I don't have I don't have the skills to like make mods for video games, and I'm not interested in trying to learn at
Mm.
this point. But like I do love the idea that, a community for a game can add to it if the developers will allow it,
Yep.
and make changes to the games. Like I went and got a symbiote skin, one that was specifically based on the designs of Todd McFarlane, who
Mm.
I like him well enough as an artist, and I was like, yeah, let's get that. But like you can get comic book looking versions of Spider-Man that look like, you can get one that looks like it's drawn by Todd McFarlane. You can get one that looks like it's drawn by John Romita Sr., rest in peace. But like there is just a whole bunch of stuff that you can do, and I only touch the skins. You can change the music, you can change the scenery, you can I believe there are mods that have made Felicia nude, stuff like that. You can do a whole lot of stuff with these mods, and so I really like the idea that the creativity of the community around these games and these characters can come into play.
Yeah.
And that isn't even the game I wanted to talk about, because one thing we haven't talked about is mobile games. And
Mm.
there are Spider-Man mobile games that have existed. I don't know if any exist at the moment that just feature Spider-Man. There are a ton of Marvel games, and I'm not going to touch those. But I think Matt Cave, I think I mentioned earlier before we started, I mentioned that I have grievances with some Spider-Man
Yeah.
aspects. So from 2014 to 2019, there was this Spider-Man game called Spider-Man Unlimited. it was a runner, okay? And I'm not
Mhm.
generally a fan of runners, okay? I was asked to review this game for a Spider-Man website that I was working for at the time. And I was like, all right, I'll play this and review it and I'll be done with it. I loved that game so much. It like yes, it's an endless runner, but you know, you could swipe from side to side, you could slide with the down swipe, you could jump with the up swipe. There were web swinging portions that tested, you know,
Nice.
and they were always adding to it. You had to fight the Sinister Six. And then you know they would add like guest boss characters for like certain events. So like Hydro Man showed up and
Mhm.
Moreland showed up and just all these characters that they didn't have in the original set of the game. And I was so mad. I am still mad that that game is gone. Like they shut down the servers in 2019. On my phone, I've got the game icon. I will not give it up. I won't like I have switched phones since then. I've made sure to migrate that icon, you know.
Great.
You can technically play it before it dies. But like there are other, I believe, Spider-Man games that have been on mobile that I don't know if I have access to, and I don't know if I ever will have
Mhm.
access to. But like that's another aspect of gaming that has touched Spider-Man, like where you could play on these. They're basically games as live services, essentially, you know, because
Yeah.
once that game went away, once they shut the servers down, you just didn't have the ability to play it in any meaningful way. But like, you know, occasionally they come along with something that really works for the type of gaming that I do on my mobile device, and I'm still grieving that they took it away.
Oh, yeah.
Did you didn't ever play that, did you?
I didn't play that. It's funny that you mentioned that though, because I happened to come across something. It was something I was looking at, and my son was here with me, and it just noticed that there was a Spider-Man runner, and we just kind of were like, "Oh, look at that!" But then didn't like look into it further because there's
When
been. I know
go
there's like the card games and stuff too that you play mobile, where it's doing like the cards with the abilities, and then they fight. Like there's the fighter style.
oh
What was that game
well
that
there's
you?
Marvel Snap.
Mhm.
I know that people were pretty zany about that by the time I
Oh,
just left mobile games behind.
mm,
Yeah, there's a ton of Marvel mobile games that feature Spider-Man and Spider-Man characters, like Marvel Contest of Champions, which I used to
mhm.
that's what my channel used to be about.
Yeah.
But yeah, like there's Marvel Future Fight that I know that Spider-Man, Silk, and Spider-Gwen were on that, and I think Miles
Mm,
Morales. There's Marvel Puzzle Quest, which is a match three game. There's a whole lot of stuff on all of those games, but you're looking at an all-inclusive Marvel game at that point, you know.
yeah.
And they are fun. I've played them and I've gotten addicted to them, and recently I just decided to break with mobile games uh entirely. And I don't have any regrets about it, but you know, some of my friends do keep me up on like I think Sandman just recently got added to Contest of Champions, which they were
Mm,
struggling for a long time to do that simply because of the nature of his animations and stuff. But you know,
yeah.
but yeah, no, you can find Spider-Man in plenty of other games than just Spider-Man games. You just kind of have to look for the larger Marvel banner, essentially. You know.
Yeah. And then with like games like especially mobile stuff that relies on some sort of a service to be active just to be able to play it. And when you have and that server shuts down, then at that point the games become practically useless, depending
Yeah.
on what it is.
Yeah.
You actually reminded me of another Spider-Man game that did have a service involved, but the game is still playable because there was a single player aspect to it. Um, did you ever play any of the Disney Infinity games?
Yes and no. I haven't really played
Mhm.
them, but I have a friend who had Disney Infinity and she got it out and I played like the first part of the first stage of the Spider-Man part of the game with her. and she's terrible at them. She's been a guest on the podcast, and we've talked about this. But I have not actually really had any significant gameplay time on Disney Infinity. So please tell me more.
It's the thing about those games, and you can still play them, because there is the whole single player and couch co-op aspect to it. But
Mhm.
there was an online service, a server to it, where you can share your creations in the game and create levels, create worlds.
Oh,
And with
nice.
every iteration of Disney Infinity, there was a server that had fan-made worlds that included Marvel stuff and Star Wars and all kinds of things that you could
Okay.
go play a world that someone made for Spider-Man and play a mission and have goals and have a story. And all of this was there,
I love that. That's
right?
awesome.
It was an amazing thing. And then Disney Interactive shut down the service.
Of course.
And I always get reminded of it because when I fire up the game, one of the first alerts that pops up that you can't go past until you go, read through it is that the service is not there anymore. It's like, yeah, thanks for the reminder. There used to be some great stuff here.
Yeah, keep ripping my heart out. That's fine. I don't use it anymore, you know?
Yeah. But there were some really good Spider-Man levels that were made for this. And I'll tell you why. It's because in the creation portion of it, like just to give you an idea of how advanced this game truly was, and people I think underestimated it, you could create an entire game within this game, and not just a 3D game. You had control of camera positioning. So people made side-scrolling platformer games,
Oh.
and they made Spider-Man games, and they made Star Wars games, and they made all the other Disney stuff. And I remember having it, and I can't play it anymore because the server's gone, so I can't play the level. Someone basically recreated Web of Fire from the 32X, but made it playable and made it function. And there were goals, and it was a functioning modern day version of Web of Fire. And I used to play it a whole bunch.
I love
It's
that.
so good.
And yeah, see, like this is a really good example of not only community involvement and the creativity of fans who love
Hmm.
this stuff, but it's
Yeah.
also a good example of, well, we don't have access to that anymore because this
Hmm.
this particular server got shut down. And
Yeah.
I mean, I know that you have a retro gaming channel, so I don't know that these issues come up all the time for you, but this is a pretty important aspect of not only video game preservation, and like,
Hmm.
it's kind of one of the reasons that, like, there's another game that I used to play a lot called City of Heroes. Have you heard of it?
Yes, I have that.
Okay. Do you have access to a live version of it?
I don't. I just have the discs. I have the
What
whole
if I told
box
you
and
that you
everything.
could play it?
Ooh.
Okay. So here's what seems to have happened, and basically someone got a hold of the source code,
Mm.
and they took the source code and made their own server. And several entities have done this, okay? And the thing is, like, this is a game that I loved until it went away in 2012 because they shut
Yeah.
down the servers. And I think the game it was reasonably profitable at the time. There was no reason for them to do it.
Yeah.
They just did it because they wanted to. So, like, it's for reasons like that, like, I went ahead and found one of these servers and logged in and started playing because not only is this game, a source of nostalgia for me, but this is again, it's a part of our digital heritage, as I like to say. It's
Yeah.
kind of one of those things that's like, when you introduce a work that people really like and identify with, and you take it away simply because it ceases to be profitable, it's just kind of like, that's an irresponsible use of your power, you know? And
Yeah.
I really kind of feel like you know, video game preservation is going to it's gonna eventually butt heads with this, what I would call, you know, this epitome of capitalism. You know, something is only good if it makes you money, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
so, but like, you know, I can only hope at some point that eventually happens with Spider-Man Unlimited. I'm probably It's probably never going to happen because City of Heroes was very like, it's very much kind of a the exception to the rule. But like, you know,
Yeah.
this is just kind of an example of you know, these entities who don't have any interest in us other than our money, you know, taking these things
Mhm.
away for reasons that they don't bother to explain. And it's just like, you know, stop that, please. Come on.
Yeah.
You're a person. You've got feelings, hopefully, you know. Don't do this to us, you know.
Yeah,
So,
keep the community alive. I mean, there was a
exactly.
very similar what happened, and I'm not surprised that happened with City of Heroes because I still play to this day Star Wars Galaxies, and that's been long since dead.
Oh,
But
wow.
fans brought it back, and it's there. You can
See?
get on the
Yeah.
servers and play this game. And the funny thing about City of Heroes was that I feel like it wasn't too long after that went away um, DC Universe came out, and that's still alive and kicking right now.
Yeah.
Like, which was basically the same idea, same type of game
Same
as
type
City
of
of Heroes.
game. I have issues with how it was executed, but you
Mm.
know, yeah. I played
But
it and I was like, it's this is fine for now, you know. You know.
are there any Marvel games of that type? I
They
don't
used to
recall
have
any.
a Marvel Heroes game that like, I
Mhm.
think it was just called Marvel Heroes. That it looked more like a Diablo style game.
Ah,
But
okay.
like they eventually shut that down because I guess it wasn't as, you know, profitable as they would have liked. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's anything like that currently in existence unless I'm mistaken. So
Yeah.
and I would be delighted to learn that I am, but I'm pretty sure I would know about something like that if it were a thing. So
Yeah.
but yeah, it's just kind of like, this is one of those issues that, you know, in modern gaming that comes up occasionally, where you have to deal with, you know, the games as live service kind of aspect. So
Yeah. I mean,
um
that's why I'm like, I'll always be someone that collects and gets a physical copy of something so that, it's like that can't be taken away,
yes,
from me from the company that made the game, right? Like if I
yes,
want to go and play Arcade's Revenge, like I got the cartridge. I'm gonna
yes,
pop it in. I'm gonna put this thing in to my Genesis and I'm gonna play it. And it helps, I try to support mom and pop shops for gaming and things like that, as much as I can. It's um the whole idea of, and I say it on my channel, is just keep retro gaming alive. Like it's
right,
something that if we don't, it's gonna go away. And I think that the fact that physical media has not completely gone away yet is because it's so crucial to keeping this stuff around. Everything can't, it just can't go 100% digital. It just, there's too many things that can make it go away. And meanwhile, at that point, you have a consumer that has purchased something, but in reality, they've purchased nothing.
right.
Like it's, you got access to
You've
something,
purchased
but
access. Yeah.
access, yeah. But that access could be taken away at any moment for any reason.
Yes.
And games go away, they literally vanish. uh, a lot of people don't know this. Ubisoft remade Turtles in Time, and it
Okay.
was on the PS3 and Xbox 360. And it only was out for like, I want to say maybe 2 months. I could be wrong, give or take a month. And it got pulled, and it has never, ever returned. And there are no physical copies.
Yes. No,
And
that's exactly
yeah,
yeah. It's like, why you do this to us? Come
yeah,
on, you
why would
know?
you do it? So that's why I'm like, I'll I'll keep my physical media working as much as I can. That's why I've invested in getting converters, and I love the company Hyperkin. They make the cables that'll convert from my retro systems to an HDMI connection, and I can play these
Oh,
games on my modern TV and stuff like that. Like, sometimes it's only up to 720p, but hey, I'll take it. This was my Sega Genesis game. I don't care what resolution it's in. I just want to be able to play it.
can you do that with an Atari 2600?
Absolutely.
Oh, I
In
love it.
fact, in fact, I'll do you one better. Uh, and they're about to have another system come out as well. Hyperkin made a system called the Retron 77, which is a little unit that takes the actual Atari 2600 cartridges and you plug in the actual joysticks to the system, and it plays in 720 and will play pretty much every Atari game. They have a new console coming out very soon that is going to also play the 5200 and the 7800 games as well. And what it's doing is the console itself is basically the emulator that relies on the physical media to tell it what it can play. And you could technically, I've done this already with my Hyperkin Retron 5, you can take your physical game and dump a ROM file and then put it into whatever emulator you like to use.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep. So
Um,
it's Hyperkin is one of my favorite companies out there in the world of retro gaming, and just even simply just getting the wires so that you can convert. I just most recently got the converter for my N64, and it plugs into one end and then comes out HDMI, and I plug it into my system and I can capture from it and the whole deal.
that is, oh my God, that's awesome. Do
Yeah.
they do that with handhelds?
I haven't looked into the handheld stuff, but they have everything listed as far as every single product on their site, which I think is just
Okay.
hyperkin.com.
Okay. All right.
Um,
I may have to
and
check that out. That
they
sounds
have deals
really
through
nice.
Amazon and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely check it out. They
Oh,
keep coming up with stuff and putting out some new hardware and new wires and things. I'll tell you, Hyperkin alone has kept my retro collection alive so much. Like it's given new life to these systems for me, to the point where I have the system set up. I have a bar down here, and I made a barcade where my kids can go sit
nice.
and play Atari, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega, and all over there, and they hang out and
You know,
play
you know,
Atari.
you know, one of these days I'm gonna have to come over to your house and hang out in your barcade.
Right?
You know, that that
Gotta check
that
out the MatCave.
that yes, yes, exactly. Exactly. No, that sounds awesome. Like,
Well,
yeah, no, I definitely want to see the Matt Cave at some point.
I
So
mean, in all honesty, when we wrap up here, I can literally walk over there and pop in Spider-Man Atari 2600 and try to get up that building.
that is that as far as I'm concerned, you're living the dream, you know? Oh my goodness. So let's see. One aspect I'd like to get into is talking, and we've covered a lot of these games now.
But
Um let's talk a little bit about the parallels with Spider-Man's development in the comics
Mhm.
and kind of with the games. I really feel like you can easily make the argument, well, the comics don't have anything to do with the video games. They're completely different stories and everything. Yeah, I suppose you could if you really wanted to be narrow about it. But let's just say that without referring to the comic books, we wouldn't have gotten Spider-Man Miles Morales in 2020. You know,
Mhm.
without referring to the comic books, we wouldn't have gotten Maximum Carnage. You know, so I kind of feel like since 1982, since the very first Spider-Man game that came out, you know, Spider-Man at that point had lost, I mean, like he had lost Gwen Stacy back in 1973 in the comics. The Punisher
Mm.
had showed up in the comics. You know, you were starting to get into this era of you were I guess you were already in this era where Stan Lee was no longer the driving force behind Spider-Man. Um and a lot of other writers were trying their hands at the character. And so I feel like a lot of the complexities that have popped up in Spider-Man's life as a result of the comics, they, a lot of that stuff, even if it doesn't directly show up in the video games, you still get like inspirations and maybe echoes from that show up in them. And really, um, like again, Maximum Carnage, I would say, is the biggest, like the most
Oh yeah.
obvious link where it was taking panels. Um, but like again, as Spider-Man develops with the video game industry, like his life has continued to get more complex in the comics. Are there any events from his life his continually more screwed up life because he never ages, and so they can just continue to add things to his life that you recall being kind of big touch points in the video games for you?
Uh, I always I always loved when the games went into his interactions with Aunt May because we've
It's a good
seen
point. Yeah.
her in many different lights, right? Different ages, different portrayals as far as how involved with his life she is.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
I even remember, um, I'm trying to remember what it was called. I have a few comic books that the last couple of pages of that issue were actually a separate story about Aunt May. It might have just been called The Web or something like
Okay.
that, but a lot of the stories would start with her at the gravesite for Uncle Ben and her telling him about, what's been going on with Peter. There have been some elements where she knew he was Spider-Man, but
Yeah.
didn't let him know that she knew. And it was always fun to see her show up in some form or even mentioned in the games. I love her portrayal in the 2018 Spider-Man game.
Oh
She's
man.
a little bit, she's not as old as we've seen her. She's a little bit younger.
Yes.
Um, she has, they really develop her backstory as far as her working career, her interaction with this city and how she works with charities and things like that. And then taking it even further with major emotional moments in that story. I won't say what it is for this case somebody hasn't played it and it's a
Right.
huge spoiler.
Right.
But to see characters like that come to life in another medium, uh, it's unbelievable. I think side characters really played such a massive role in the changing of Peter Parker. Like Peter Parker
Yeah.
has changed dramatically depending on who he's interacting with. Black Cat is another one that has like thrown him for a loop. She even appears in that Disney Infinity game and
Oh,
like kind
cool.
of gives like there's Black Cat side missions and stuff to do. And you can already tell that like she's kind of been a little bit of a thorn in his side, as far as not just his life as Spider-Man, but his personal life as Peter. And it's
And of course, Felicia is always a big flirt and uses that to her
Mhm.
advantage. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, like, um, to talk about, one of the upcoming games, Marvel's Spider-Man 2, Harry
Mhm.
Osborn is apparently going to be in this game.
Oh, that'd be
And
great.
from
Yeah, we
from
didn't. We
what,
only got to hear from him in the
yeah,
other one.
he's in the game, and apparently he is working with Spider-Man and
Mm.
knows Peter's that Peter is Spider-Man. Like, there's a scene from I think it's a recent trailer where they're like in a lab or something, and Peter's fighting off a bunch of guys, and he's talking to Harry over the intercom, and Harry refers to him as Peter, you know. And
Mm.
so like that's really interesting, and I would argue that that has also been pulled from the comics because after Norman Osborn was killed, Harry Osborn has never cared for Spider-Man, of course.
Yep.
He's hated him. And then there are times when Harry has learned that Peter was Spider-Man and then made his life hell as a result. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out and see what goes on because I think I think, you know, I'm one of those people, like, I love reading the comics. I love playing the video games, watching the movies, the shows, and all that. I don't do like this might surprise you, I don't know. I don't do a lot of I don't spend a lot of time thinking about how I would do my own Spider-Man story or my own Spider-Man, like if I wanted to make a show or a movie or something. But
Yeah.
I have had recently one kind of like, you know, twist come to mind, and it's like, what if we do what if we do a Spider-Man like series or show, but instead of Peter not, you know, doing this thing where I'm like, I don't want to put anyone in danger. I need to keep my identity a secret. Where he basically lets like Aunt May know, maybe not from the get-go, but really early. And he lets his close friends know so that he can get help from them. And you know, he kind of comes along with the reasoning of, look, I can probably best protect my friends if they know what's going on in my life. And then they can
Mm.
make the decisions about how to handle that based on, you know, what they know of my crazy life. And you know, like I would, you know, it's kind of something that took root recently, and I was like, that would actually be a really interesting approach. That, you know, like you find out like in the games that Peter is a little bit more, you know, like maybe he still tries to keep the identity a secret, but like more and more people seem to know that than used to, like in the comics and the
Yeah.
shows and stuff. And especially in Miles's case, like, but by the end of the Miles game, his mom knows. His dad has already been killed. His uncle finds out pretty early in the game, and actually, even though they fight, his uncle is much more protective of Miles than he was in the comics. Um,
Mm.
and like the basically the neighborhood, like his Harlem part of New York, like they see him without his mask and near his mother, basically. And like, you know, did you play Miles Morales?
Yeah, I haven't finished it completely, but I've played a bunch of it. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I don't know that I should say much more then, but like there is a whole like community aspect to this.
Mm.
And I feel like, you know, like if they do another animated show or something, like I know freshman year is coming out probably next year, but like if they ever do like another kind of regular one that isn't an MCU tie-in, do one where like Peter just makes the decision as a hero, like, hey, I'm gonna tell Gwen, I'm gonna tell MJ, I'm gonna tell Harry, and they can help me. I'm gonna tell like Ned, you know, and he can have his
Yeah.
own like team of not superhumans, but people that are helping him, you know. I don't know. I really
I think
feel. Go ahead.
in the world of video games, that would make for some great decision-based, like BioWare style gaming. Like
Yes. No,
make a
you're
Spider-Man
right.
game that plays like Mass Effect or plays like KOTOR,
Yeah.
and you decide who knows your identity, who's part of your team, build the relationships with those characters, and it could change the outcome of those stories. Like KOTOR was such a great example of that because there were so many characters in that game, but you could literally get through the whole game pretty much just your character and one other if you so chose. Like
Right.
it just
Yeah.
you didn't have to have any of those other characters be friendly with yours. Like it just in fact some of them you could eliminate because
Yes. Yes.
but if they did something like that, especially in the whole grand scale of the Spider-Verse, I mean
Oh
that would be
man.
unbelievable.
Yeah, no. I really think that on the video games front, after we get through this trilogy of Insomniac game,
Mm,
okay, I don't know that it's a trilogy. I think it's going to be a trilogy,
I think so
but
too.
I think once we get past that, I honestly think that you've got Spider-Verse just waiting. You've got the Into the Spider-Verse
Yep.
movies, you've got the comics, You've got stuff that happened in Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions. Like all of that is fertile ground for some really good and really intensive video gaming. And I think I hope someone will come along and take it by the horns and really kind of develop it, you know? So,
Oh yeah.
okay. How much do we want to talk about the recent Spider-Man games? Because we've talked about 2018, we've
Mm,
talked a little bit about Miles Morales, and then of course we've got Spider-Man 2 coming out in on October 20th, which is about a month from now.
mm.
Um, you've played the 2018 game, right?
Yep.
And then and you've played most of Miles Morales.
Mm.
What do you think of those games just before we really get into it? Like what are your
Those
feelings
games
with them?
are I enjoy them so much.
Hmm.
One because it's it's one of those games that you can pick up for really however long you want to in any sitting with that game
Right,
because I'll sit down with the game and be like, okay, I'm gonna go through the story right now. That's my objective.
right.
But there's times where I've spent a couple hours in that game and I haven't done any story missions. I've gone around the city
You
and
just do
I've
side content.
saved citizens and do all this, it's like just swing around and be Spider-Man. Like that's the fun of those games. And I think the superhero genre overall benefits from gameplay style like that, where you as the player have the choice of how you're gonna, take on this world. And I did the same thing that you did. I got it on PS4, and then they did the remaster and the upgrade and everything, and I got it again on
Uh,
there. So I thought the game looked amazing to begin with, and then now we had all the ray tracing and all that stuff. So the city like really comes to life. That's another thing too about superhero characters is that where they're from is practically a character in itself. This Manhattan is such a major part, even more so than Manhattan, but like Queens for Spider-Man.
oh
It's
yeah.
like this is part of that character. It's almost a character in itself, which is one of the reasons why I'm so excited for this new release and adding Queens and adding the Bronx, and it's just like we're we're going to be able to explore more of a residential area
Yeah.
rather than going through the city. And when you think about that from the performance of the game and gameplay mechanics, we're swinging anytime we want because there's tall buildings to latch onto wherever.
Right.
Not so much in these areas.
Yeah.
So how do we
Oh, I
get
can I can
around
answer that. I can answer that. Web zipping. It's called web zipping. Yeah,
web zipping? Yeah.
where you
Yep.
you 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 web to a
Yeah, the
certain
quick
point
shoot. Yeah.
and then you just yank yourself like and that's a
Yep.
gameplay mechanic.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, one of my favorite things to do in the 2018 game is I would try to see how far I could web zip without doing any swinging. And there actually is a
Mhm.
portion in the game where you have to do that. And
Nice.
the first time I had to do it, of course, it was annoying, but like I've gotten a lot better at the web swinging in the games. I'm just used to it
Yeah.
now. And so sometimes I'll just be like, okay, web point launch,
Mhm.
web zip point launch, web zip point, and I freaking love doing it. You feel so accomplished when you do it. So, but yeah, I remember looking at the publicity, like the marketing for the 2018 game, and it it had answered my prayers because I remember playing the Batman Arkham games. And I remember thinking, who would benefit from this treatment? Who, has a comparable rogues gallery and everything? Spider-Man. And I was like,
Oh yeah.
when is Rocksteady going to make like a Spider-Man game like this? And Insomniac basically was like, hey, we got this.
We got
And
it.
and I remember watching that first video and I'm like, this is what I've wanted for so long. Because like I played the Amazing Spider-Man games, the ones from the movies, the Andrew Garfield
Mhm.
movies, and they were trying to do that, but they weren't doing it as well. Like the web zipping or the web swinging and the point to point, like they had like a fairly large scale New York City, but like getting
Yeah.
from one place to the other, it just did like it was this weird system where like you could like freeze time for a second and then you could move the camera around to and then wherever like a Spider-Man silhouette was, you could essentially kind of auto web zip to it, and it just didn't feel very, it felt like you were teleporting around basically.
Mm.
And I was like, yeah, this isn't quite like you're getting there, but you're not quite there, you know. Insomniac knocked it out of the park. The Insomniac games to
Yeah.
me are peak Spider-Man. Like this is
Oh yeah.
like if you're gonna make like a top list of Spider-Man games, I'll get there one day, guys.
Mhm.
But if you're going to make a top list of those games, like you have these are at the top. Like you know,
Mm.
I mentioned them being under an umbrella because if you do a top 5 list, I'm sure that Spider-Man and Miles Morales are probably going to be in that list. Like Miles Morales might not be at the top and it might not be even be number 2. It's at least going to be number 5 though, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like I put the Insomniac games under one umbrella to give the other games a chance, basically. Because there are some good other Spider-Man games out there, but they are not like Insomniac has kind of gotten to the technological point where just we're at the peak of recreating the immersion and the Spider-Man experience. Now it's all down to the narrative, you know.
Yeah.
And
And it's I'm curious the direction they're going to go with this as well, because there is another form of immersion when it comes to Spider-Man games that we haven't covered.
oh,
And it's something I have, and my son plays it all the time.
what?
This was more of a mini game rather than anything because it was designed as an experience to promote
Okay.
the film. When Spider-Man
Ah,
Homecoming was
I think I know
coming
where you're
out,
going. Yes.
right, there was a limited release in VR. We have it on our
Uh-huh. Yep.
PlayStation VR, and
Okay.
it's Spider-Man Homecoming. And
I never
the
heard
game
of that.
starts with you're in Peter's apartment and you get a call from his friend in the movie, and they're like, at this point he's already in the guy in the chair
Right,
role, so he's
right.
helping
Yeah.
out, and he lets you know of something going on. So you have the motion controllers, you open up a drawer, and there's your mask. You reach out, like you literally reach out, you pick it up, and you put the mask on. Now you're Spider-Man, and you jump out the window. And now
Wow.
you're using the motion controls to web swing your way through the city. And then
Wow.
there's little tasks like hitting targets and stuff like that because it's very mini game. But then robots show up because there's bad guys. And now you're like, okay, this is what I just practiced for.
Right.
Swing around and hit these things with your web, all in VR.
Let's
And it,
let's talk about VR for a second because VR is something that I have limited experience with.
mm,
The most experience that I have with it is when I went to PAX South a few years ago.
mm,
Oculus Rift was there, and I got into this VR game where you played some spy and you were on a plane and you were just trying to move around. I had a really
mhm,
difficult time with it, you know.
right.
And so I'm wondering with the advent of VR and I know it's getting better and probably easier to use and everything, but like
Mm.
do do you think that VR is eventually going to supplant things like the Insomniac experience, which is essentially, you know, a third person, I would call it? Um, like it seems like an extreme form of FPS to me, essentially.
Yeah.
And so, like, what are your thoughts on that? Because I feel like, you know, it's a new form of technology, and as it gets better, which I feel is going to probably be a decades long process here, like I could see us doing sort of like a Ready Player One thing where we have lives
Mhm.
in a persistent uh digital realm in addition to our real lives. But
Yeah.
I don't know, for gaming, I'm not so sure. What are your thoughts on that?
I, I think when a game is truly developed to be a VR game, it's a different type of experience because then you get a complete experience in that style.
Okay.
But what I've noticed a lot more of, and that's what this Spider-Man Homecoming thing was more of like an add-on experience of some sort.
Okay.
And I feel like we may get that, especially now with the new with the next generation VR systems coming out, and we got the PSVR 2 that's out there now. I feel like we may actually get some form of DLC with this new Spider-Man game that's going to be a VR portion of the game. Not so
Interesting.
much of playing the whole game in VR, but I feel like extra missions or something like that. And I'll give you an example. When the new Tomb Raider trilogy came out, we had the whole reboot of the franchise, starting
Hmm.
over, retelling her story. We had the new
Right.
Tomb Raider games.
Yeah.
The second game came out, and I remember, and I got it, and I was like, "This is VR ready." I'm like, "What are we doing with that?" So I grabbed my PSVR to see what this was. It wasn't playing the whole game in VR. It was Croft Manor, and you go through her home, her mansion, and play different missions in there in virtual reality. Where now
Okay.
you have in first person, right? So I feel like they could do this with the new Spider-Man game and say, okay, now pick your role. Are you Peter? Are you Miles? Are you Venom? Are you whoever? And go on new quests that weren't in the main game and make the VR an
Interesting.
add-on feature rather than the main feature. I've seen
Huh.
this happen in so many games where they use the VR not as the main game but an add-on. Actually, this was the reason I bought the PlayStation VR. It literally I bought this system for one mission in a game, and it was EA's 2015 Star Wars Battlefront,
Ah,
and
why
they
am I not
added a VR
surprised?
mission. Dude, you hop in an X-Wing, it takes place during Rogue One, and you are in it. And I'm like, this is it. This is the dream. I'm like, I'm flying an X-Wing for real. It's just like,
For real.
okay. Yeah, for real. And it just being able to sit there and look around, and I'm looking out of this cockpit and I'm seeing space and I'm seeing star destroyers fly overhead and TIE fighters flying around and stuff. I'm like, this is unbelievable. And then that Spider-Man Homecoming thing came out, and I've played it. My son plays it a lot more than I do. um, but I popped this thing on and I'm like, and I'm moving my arms around and seeing Spider-Man's hands move
Right.
around 1 to 1, no delay. And I'm like,
I mean,
okay, I want to
that's pretty
swing
cool.
over there. And I
Yeah.
go like this, and I'm like, whoa, I'm going.
No, no, that does sound amazing. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
So, no, there's it's interesting because like, again, kind of my thesis for this whole episode
Mm,
is that as Spider-Man has developed within the video game medium, he's definitely kind of reflected the development of the video game industry as a whole.
mm,
And definitely, since he is just super popular and obviously a very kind of bankable property, um, he's had lots of successful video games. We've had some not so successful ones. You've had your
mhm.
Spider-Man friend or foe, or uh, the arcade, the X-Men arcade one. You have those as well. But you have to stumble to come up with the good stuff. And I really do feel that he's going to be at the forefront of um, a lot of the developments within the industry these days, be they things like live service or virtual reality or things like that. And his popularity kind of guarantees that any of those issues that come up within the industry are going to affect his development within the medium as well. So I think that I think that we've covered a lot of good stuff today. This has been a wonderful conversation. Just
Absolutely, dude.
yeah, no, it's been great. Um, if you like what are I guess what kind of final thoughts do you have with regard to this character and this medium?
I think Spider-Man is a character that we are going to see in gaming literally forever. I don't see the end of Spider-Man based video games. I mean, it's just there's so much potential there that even with as far as we've come with it, there's still more. There's still more. As that character evolves in the comic book where he originally came from, all the way to these animated series that still continue to this day, where we see all different forms, everything from, more adult oriented to Spider-Man and his amazing friends with the little like pop figure looking guys, which my kids love that. My daughter loves that show. And it's they could make a game of that, in
They
all
could.
honesty.
They
They
could.
could. And
And
there
I
you
would
go. There's a
probably
whole
play it.
nother potential. It would,
Yeah.
yeah, so would
I
I.
would probably
Which
play
is
it.
it's look, I mean, I'm sitting over here playing, Paw Patrol Racer, so I'll
Oh,
play anything.
okay.
But it's but there's so much potential because Spider-Man is a character that everyone can get behind. No matter what age group, there is a version of Spider-Man for everyone. And then on top of that, additional characters like Spider-Gwen and all the different versions of the Spider-Verse from Miles Morales all the way to the 2099 and all this stuff. Like it's just even Spider-Ham. I mean, that was the one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life, or Spider-Pig, or whatever you call him. He's got the big mallet and
Yeah, Spider-Ham.
Spider-Ham, right? That's just unbelievable. Which, by the way, Spider-Ham has made his way into Fortnite as
Oh
an emote.
God.
So you could have your pickaxe and a portal will open and Spider-Man will come out, Spider-Ham will come out, take your pickaxe and give you a big mallet. And then that's your
Oh
pickaxe.
man, that is crazy.
So it's even stuff like that, cameos and breaking the fourth wall and all this stuff that this character does and the little jokes and everything, how his character grows, and sometimes we see him a little older, sometimes we see him a little younger, but at the end of the day, we've all found something in this character that has drawn us to him because I think it he's kind of just the everyman of this world. Like anyone could be Spider-Man. Like it's
Yeah.
like he feels like it could be you, right?
Yeah.
It's not the same as Iron Man with the billionaire. I'm just making all this stuff and craziness, to build this
Right.
up. Which Iron
Yeah.
Man is so cool, and I love the character. But it's Peter Parker is that everyman, and when you have a character like that, not only in comics, movies, and animated shows, but throw that character into a video game where the whole idea is to be immersed and be that character, that's a perfect fit. Now you are
Could
that character.
could not agree with you more. And you're right. He is going to be around in video games forever. Um,
Yeah.
you know, barring unforeseen disaster that I just don't see happening. So, but yeah, no, it's been a great discussion. I've always been both a huge Spider-Man enthusiast and a big fan of video games. So I really enjoyed getting to delve into this topic, especially with my friend MatCave here, who's by the way, I just want to say, like, on video and on the air as it is, I just want to say I'm very proud of you. Because your channel has recently just blown up. What are you at right now? About 3.4 thousand subscribers, something
We're a
like that?
little over 3,400 at this
Oh my
point.
God. Like, and I've watched it happen, and I'm like, could not happen to a more deserving guy. So I just want to say, like, like having you here, I've wanted to have this discussion irregardless, but like, watching that progress lately, I've just been like, yes, all right, so
I
um
appreciate that.
so where can people find you online?
Well, the best place to find me is right here on this platform on YouTube. It's MatCave Gaming, and that's where I put the bulk of any content that I create. I am on Twitter as well, or I don't even know if we still call it Twitter. The one with the X. I'm on I'm on there now. I do post some content on there every once in a while, and I'm looking to do a little bit more on there as well. Believe it or not, I have a TikTok as well,
Okay.
where I just put mostly silly things on there. But my main one is right here on YouTube. This is where my home will be forever. This is where MatCave Gaming will live, and where we're gonna keep retro gaming alive as long as we possibly can.
And before before I let you go, I just want to ask you. So you use the term retro gaming a lot. What to you constitutes a retro game? Like, does it have to be a certain age? What's the cutoff? I'm wondering.
So it, there is a definitive answer to that, and I
Okay.
forget exactly what the time frame is. It was something like it's like a range of like 13 years or something like that, or whatever it was. Somebody actually put a number to it, but that's not how I look at it.
Okay.
I think retro gaming is a personal thing. I think if the game is nostalgic to you within your lifetime, from that made you a gamer growing up, so like this was a game you played as a kid, right? This could be somebody who was born today, and 20 years from now they're talking about that. That's their retro game. And then obviously anything prior to your lifetime, like I was born in '82, but I, obviously played content from before that, from old computer systems to the original Atari and things like that. But I've always looked at retro gaming as being a personal thing. That's what is nostalgic to you. So we've got a lot of people that that nostalgia for them begins at a PS2 or a PS3.
Mhm.
Like for me, it begins at the Atari. It begins like way back, but that's just because I was lucky enough to be part of this generation that grew up with the true evolution of gaming. But it's really what comes down to what kind of makes that nostalgic feeling for you as a gamer.
That's
And
fair.
there's plenty of stuff that it's going to start to reach a point where the things we consider retro. Like for me personally, I'm like I kind of look at like Atari 2600 to the PS2, but almost not even quite. Like I would even back it up to like the PS1. That's my retro era because
Okay.
I feel like the PS2 and the Xbox uh lifespan at that point, that was a huge jump in gaming where it made a massive jump in graphics and gameplay capabilities and features and everything. I mean, the PS2 was a DVD player and all this stuff. Like
Right.
we were into a
Yeah.
new realm of technology. So my personal version of retro is Atari to PS1. That's
Okay.
my zone right there. And then the thing I really pivoted to on my channel was, and I believe this all works hand in hand, I focused the channel on retro, remasters, and remakes. Because I think remasters and remakes are a huge part of keeping retro gaming alive.
Oh
In
God,
fact,
yes. Oh God,
I'll,
yes.
I'll bring it up real quick. I don't know if anybody saw this. I just saw it drop this morning. The original Tomb Raider trilogy has been remastered, and it's coming to the PlayStation and the Switch.
Yes, I saw that. They're also they've done a I think a remaster of it hasn't released yet. The Mario RPG.
Yes, that's
That's
coming.
it's coming out in November. So
Yeah.
and
Oh, I can't wait.
I'm gonna play that. I'm definitely
Yeah.
gonna play that. So but yeah, no, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking some
Thanks for having
Spider-Man
me.
video game history with me.
Mhm.
Stick around for the outro here, but I'm again like this is kind of again I wanted to have this discussion about these two topics with this person. So we've got the culmination of one of my dreams here. So very happy about that. So alrighty, guys, and with that, we have reached the end of the segment, and I believe the end of the show. If you enjoyed this episode of The Webline, please be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on my YouTube channel, simply named Spidey Librarian. The Webline is also available on audio services, so when you see us on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, or I can't talk right now, or another such service, please leave a review, rating, and, where possible, follow us as well. You can find me on my socials under the name Spidey Librarian on Threads, Twitter/X, Instagram, WordPress, and Twitch. And finally, if you'd like to shoot me an email, you can contact me at spideylibrarian@gmail.com, where I'll be happy to hear your thoughts, rants, and ideas. You never know. Your email might be featured in an upcoming episode. The Webline will be on break next week, but be sure to join us in 2 weeks on October 1st as we begin a Spooktober-themed lineup of podcast programming. During the first week, fellow Spider fan and horror enthusiast Aaron Garcia will be joining me to talk about the enemies of Spider-Man who fall on the more terrifying side of the spectrum. Who are they, and which ones are our favorites? You'll have to tune in on October 1st to find out. Thank you for listening, and until the next episode, I'll be wishing you a good day. Bye.